Sometimes when I'm working on a creative project that I'm really proud of, whether it's a YouTube video or a song, I find myself obsessively worrying that I might die before I can share it with the world. Maybe that's why in the past I'd work on songs for so many hours straight that my brain would eventually just start automatically generating melodies, trying to create more and more interesting variations of them. The melodies would get so loud in my head that they'd prevent me from sleeping. I'd call that state melody hell. I worked almost as tirelessly on my video titled Most HEPA Air Purifiers Are a Scam that you might have seen. And when I finally finished these projects, I felt really physically burnt out. And instead of actually resting, my brain just found something else to be stimulated by. For a long time, I didn't even realize rest was something I actually needed. It's not like I was staying up all night working. I wasn't pulling 100-hour work weeks. I got 8 hours of sleep. I did things I enjoyed. I thought I had balance. But even when I was resting, my brain wasn't. If I watched TV, I was analyzing, scrutinizing, never just like absorbing it. And when I planned my daily routine, it wasn't to create space for rest. It was to optimize, to clear as many tasks as possible, back to back with no gaps in between. And I thought that was a good thing until it caught up with me. I grew up hearing the phrase, do something constructive with your time. It was drilled into me that being productive was good and resting was lazy. I didn't even question it. For example, I never understood why people took naps. I always felt like they just made me more tired. Even stopping to sit during a walk felt unnecessary to me. I remember times on dates in my 20s, if we were walking together and my date said, you want to sit on this bench and rest for a minute? I wouldn't say this, but I'd think, sure, but why? Are you tired? I'm not tired. I want to walk and get my steps in. Somewhere along the way, it got drilled into me that being sedentary is death and exercise is life. If you stop moving, it means you're stagnant, vulnerable, closer to decay. I also had this thing, and still kind of do, where I needed to clear everything off my plate before I could let myself relax. If a task felt heavy and looming, I'd sprint to finish it, thinking I'd finally get a break. Except I never actually did because there was always something else my mind would latch onto. Most of my rushing wasn't about like ambition or perfectionism. It was about making space for pleasure. I wanted to get through the boring, necessary parts of life as fast as possible so I could sit in front of the TV with my favorite food and light up my neurons. There's something addictive about eating while watching something, right? When I was younger, I'd put on Family Guy and eat literal tubs of sunflower butter. Well, not straight sunflower butter, you savage. I used puffin cereal like tortilla chips and scooped it. Bold. Innovative. For as long as I can remember, protecting my solo pleasure time has been a priority. I've left social gatherings early just to get home for it. And it's not just social things. I rush through everything. I don't want things hanging over my head while I'm trying to enjoy myself, so I rush through them. It's almost like if I can cross the finish line, then I'll finally be free. But I never really stopped racing. That's the problem. And I wasn't just rushing through tasks. It's like I was escaping them. It was like I was holding my breath, waiting to exhale, which is probably why I was so tense all the time. I've thought a lot about like why I'm this way. I mean, who really knows? I think it depends on what lens you use. Some people might say it's a core wound from childhood, right? That I'm trying to prove I'm not defective by always being productive. Or maybe it's epigenetic trauma passed down through my bloodline. Others might say it's a spiritual issue, a deep existential restlessness from a lack of purpose, true community, connection with the earth. Or maybe it's from growing up in an unhealthy culture. And then there's the physiological side. Maybe it's from long-term biotoxin and chemical exposure, and that my body isn't great at detoxifying these things to begin with, it seems. Maybe it's all of the above or something I haven't even thought of. Here we consider all possibilities, from the spiritual to the empirical. I don't know that there's one single answer, but I do know that this constant state of simmering stress has actually helped me function well. This is fascinating. There's research on this. People perform better on tests when they have moderate levels of cortisol, a stress hormone. Too relaxed, you don't do well. Too stressed, you don't do well. The best performance happens in this middle zone, where you're simmering at just the right level of stress. And let me tell you, I mastered the art of simmering. I heard stories of people working themselves into chronic illness and thought, that's not me. I only work 40 hours a week. I get 8 hours of sleep. I relax every day. So I thought I was fine, but I wasn't. And people tried to tell me. An acupuncturist I used to see would tell me, stop thinking so much, which honestly just pissed me off. He thought that my health issues were exclusively caused by my overactive mind. One time, I was late to an appointment with him, so I rushed and crashed my car on the way. And don't you think for a second that the irony of that is lost on me? I was rushing to go somewhere and relax, rushing to an acupuncture appointment where you sit on a table and close your eyes. Then there was a therapist I saw in Western Massachusetts who had these two really smelly dogs who would just mob me every session. And they'd leave this greasy residue on my clothes. Anyway, this therapist once asked me, when you're curious about something, how often do you go down rabbit holes looking it up? I said, a lot. And she said, you should try not doing that. On my way home, I thought, great, yet another practitioner who doesn't understand me. My constant curiosity is just part of who I am. It's not a pathology. And then there's all the vague wellness advice out there. Instagram posts about moving slowly and healing your nervous system and being gentle with yourself, or grounding practices. I'm no stranger to healthy practices. I'm obsessed with those. For years, I thought meditation was the solution. And for the record, I still meditate daily, and my stance on it is that it's extremely beneficial for so many reasons, obviously. But sometimes it makes me feel more stressed. And you might say, well, it shouldn't. And to that I say, but it does. I try not to deal with what should or shouldn't be, but instead with what is. To my Western brain, meditation feels goal-oriented, like a task I need to optimize, which causes me to simmer yet again. Even if I'm just observing my thoughts, I can feel my body releasing stress hormones so I can focus better, which decreases its benefit. Now I'll talk about when my body forced me to actually learn how to rest. It was during my first winter in the Seattle area. The lack of sunlight, the constant rain, and the moldy home I was living in triggered dizziness, anxiety, and brain fog that just would not go away. My mold illness was getting worse, and I was forced to stop just pushing through. I had no choice but to figure out how to actually let my nervous system settle. I was hearing some signs that I really needed to stop. And for me, it's this feeling in my chest, like my heart is burning rubber almost. It's a kind of pressure, tension, excess energy that builds up. And the dizziness, like I said. So I would try to use the relaxation strategies I had relied on in the past, like watching TV, playing music, reading, meditating, etc. But none of them worked anymore. And I was scared it would get worse and worse and worse until, I don't know where that leads. And then I heard this analogy from Cory Muscara, a spiritual teacher. The mind is like a snow globe. When you keep shaking it, the snow never settles. And we think we're allowing our snow to settle when we do self-soothing strategies like watching TV, looking at our phones, even working out. But really, we're just continuing to shake the snow globe by adding more stimulation to the mix. So how do we allow that snow to truly settle? Doing nothing at all. This was a life-changing revelation for me. But how do you do nothing at all? What do you do to do nothing? Well, I'll tell you what you don't do. Something. For real though, I just lay on a couch or a bed or a comfortable chair. No phone, no TV, no book. My dog actually helps a lot with this. When I rest, he instinctively curls up next to me, and that alone reminds me it's okay to stop. When I rest like this, I actually enjoy it somehow. I don't find it boring. I feel free. I feel relieved. Here's how I practically implemented rest into my life. 1. Scheduling it. My daily routine includes 10 minutes of rest. Having it scheduled makes it happen instead of being something I intend to do but never actually do. 2. Listening to my body. Over time, I've gotten better at listening to the subtle body sensations that tell me I need to stop. This advice is especially relevant for people with CIRS or mold illness who have adrenal fatigue with dizziness. 3. Work timers. I set 40-minute focus blocks, then stop for 10 minutes, even if I'm not done. You can use different amounts of time. This trains my brain to stop seeing unfinished work as an emergency. 4. Reframing looming tasks. Instead of thinking I need to finish everything before I can relax, I remind myself, there will always be unfinished tasks. The goal isn't to clear my plate, it's to stop thinking I need to. Now I ask myself, what's the one most important thing I can do today? And I let the other stuff go, or at least I try to. And what's crazy is that when I actually rest, I notice things. My stomach digests food properly and empties faster. My heart beats more normally, and my dizziness lessens. Because life is life, there are still some challenges that arise. The second I feel rested, my brain immediately wants to get back to work. I have to fight that instinct all the time. Like I mentioned, I used to think rest meant sitting down with a big bowl of food and watching a TV show. And sure, that can be comforting, even restorative in some ways, but it's mostly a distraction, a way to self-soothe, not true rest. Instead, I'm talking about actually doing nothing. No goal, no way to optimize it, no way to mess it up. Most of us have overstimulated dopamine systems, largely because of our phones, of course. What I really want people to understand is that we don't need to make our self-care more entertaining. We need to take breaks from being entertained. True rest is stopping, letting the snow globe settle instead of shaking it. Okay, here's my hot take. I don't believe that meditation or grounding rituals are true rest. I anticipate that someone's going to argue that lying on the couch and doing nothing is meditation, and I disagree. In a practical sense, most meditation techniques involve an object, something to repeatedly direct your focus to, whether it's your breath, a mantra, a visualization, anything. Even in something like Dzogchen or open awareness meditation, where you're not really focusing on one thing, there's still a practice happening. There's still a level of awareness and intention. You're observing, you're allowing, you're resting in the nature of mind. True rest is different. It's not a technique. You're not practicing awareness. You're not even trying to be present. You're just stopping. Some people swear that nervous system regulation alone can cure autoimmune disease. I don't know if that's true for everyone. Firstly, not everyone is in a situation where they can relax, whether because of external circumstances or their own internal state. Most importantly, though, when it comes to complex chronic illnesses, if improving just one dimension of your life is enough to make you better, you are lucky. Most of us have to address multiple factors: diet, exercise, the nervous system, air quality and mold exposure, sunlight, sleep, and socialization, just to see real progress. Nevertheless, for me, learning to rest has been one of the biggest shifts in my healing, and now I'm ready to live differently. You might have noticed that my background is different, and it's because I just moved to Colorado. I am absolutely loving it here. The sun is oddly strong and ever present, and it's healing me on a deep level. This has been a very taxing few years for me. I've had to learn, build, dismantle, move over and over. Now is the time to do less, to allow my body and mind to heal from the constant trauma. I've been in problem-solving mode for too long, always trying to figure out the cause behind the cause. In these coming days, I want to walk slowly with the sun on my face. I want to stop compulsively researching every trivial curiosity that crosses my mind. I want to stop having strong opinions about every little thing. I want to allow for the mystery, the neutrality within me. I want to spread comfort and love, but most of all, I want to rest.